Hello. So no introduction for this. Obviously, this is part of a live broadcast. If you're watching this as a VOD, sorry that there is no bumper. We didn't have time to create one, especially for this, because it has kind of come out of left field. But just to let you know, this is going to be something a little bit different to what I usually do. This is an interview with a League of Legends subreddit moderator. Just to put this into context, why we're doing this interview, some of you may have noticed over the last few weeks that I released several articles talking about whether or not Riot's relationship with the subreddit moderators was perhaps a little bit close. Now, since publishing those articles, uh, my kind of day to day has been very different. I had to leave my home after several threats were sent to me across social media. I had to delete my Reddit account to remove that as a point of access. There were several very unpleasant things being said to me indeed. I have subsequently found myself permanently banned from Reddit for reasons that have never been made clear to me. And this is an IP ban across the site, a shadow ban across the site. Any accounts I make are subsequently shadow banned. And any attempt I make to reach out to staff to explain it results in that account also being banned. And I've still received no clarification as to why this is happening. Now, what we wrote about seemed fairly innocuous. I had no idea that it would lead to this kind of backlash, to this kind of incident. And ultimately what we were talking about was whether or not it's appropriate for a subreddit moderator to have an NDA with a company, whether it's appropriate for a subreddit moderator to accept gifts from a company, whether it's appropriate for a subreddit moderator to be openly saying I'm seeking employment with a company, and yet you control a subreddit that pertains to the business of that company. I felt in the interest of transparency, it was vitally important that we publish these articles. Several people disagreed. Several people felt it was part of some ongoing long-lasting vendetta, which I suppose would hold water if I hadn't been working on the articles for some time. Anyway, the reason I was able to gain access to all that information is with the person that I brought onto the chat with me now. Now, he's not going to appear on camera. We've got here a chap called Platypus, full username Kamikaze Platypus. He was accepted into the Reddit moderation team, and after a very short period of time involved with them, was massively concerned about what he saw while he was involved in there. Now, we're going to start a very long and in-depth interview, so hopefully people will bear with us and listen to what we've got to say. But just right off the bat, I want to point out that I used an unfortunate term on Twitter. I said he was a plant, which that isn't what I meant. What I meant was that I'd communicated with him and I was interested in learning about his findings, if there were any, when he approached me and told me that he's seen some stuff in the subreddit. So everybody said that we put him in there and that it was an ethical breach. I'd just like you now, Platt, if you would, to basically talk about our relationship, because we were accused of being in cahoots because you apparently used to work at Esports Heaven after I left. An accusation I found interesting because apparently them working in close proximity with Riot doesn't open them to bias, but you working for a publication I used to work for apparently does.
Yeah, and the funny thing with that is I actually only made one article with ESH. I had actually recently come and joined them to start writing some stuff through a friend of mine. And I wrote one article, was about to write another, and then I got approached by the Reddit mod saying, hey, do you want to be on the mod team? And I never actually got any money. Like, I was on a trial period, so like I had just like freshly joined ESH. And they were a bunch of great guys, but I mean, I decided, you know what? I'm not really going to have the time to fully commit to churning out articles in the next little bit because I had exams coming up and end of semester stuff. So I decided, hey, screw it. I'll join the mods, see if I can actually do anything, see what happens. And I actually didn't even approach you until the 11th of March, which was, I think, a week in, maybe like a week and a little bit after I had actually joined the moderation team. So it's, yeah.
So just to be absolutely clear, even though, I mean, I think we last spoke in November. I think you called into an episode of Trash Talk, but we hadn't spoken between that.
No. Last time I think I had spoken to you prior was, God, maybe one episode of Trash Talk, and before that I hadn't spoken to you till like November or something.
Okay. So there's a lot of area to cover. I mean, I guess I'll start with a general question. Like, how long was it before you kind of felt, I need to reach out to somebody, I need to speak to a journalist, I need to kind of unveil what's going on behind the scenes? How long did it take, and what was it that kind of triggered, dare I use that word,
Oh
triggered you
God.
to sort of reach out to me?
I mean, at first it seemed, relatively innocuous. It seemed like a bunch of people who were very misunderstood in the way they dealt with things behind the scenes. And as I kind of slowly got into it, they started being really open. And at first I thought, okay, well, this is pretty good. They're really open to an interpretation of ideas, and we're having like a discussion here. And I went to go post a bunch of rules, and the first big red flag for me personally was I proposed a rule that would basically just outline in red fucking text on the rule page that journalists and anyone with any sensitive information would not be approached and asked for a source on anything ever. Like that was just kind of like a rule for the mods to not
Okay.
ever pass that line. And before there was actually one person on the team, poor Leno, who immediately said, like, posted in the comment thread and said, "I didn't read this, but you should not be posting this." And that was my first red flag to say, am I really part of a team here? Am I really supposed to be helping out here? Because another thing that they had also implemented, which I didn't know about until after I had actually gone and started looking for stuff, was they implemented a mandatory 5 hour a week participation in the moderation activity. So you had to commit 5 hours a week every week for 6 months before you could take a less active position within the moderation team. And I thought, well, in the application they said that there was no requirement for input in time, but
Mm.
then they'd put this requirement in, and at the same time I'm being told that I shouldn't be proposing rules. So it seemed it started seeming a little fishy. Like they had brought these people and just kind of like be the workhorses for the team, among a couple other things where they had said, we have an NDA with Riot, and I was like, wait, what? That
Mm.
that doesn't seem right. That what like at first I was pretty convinced that they had no direct dealings with Riot in terms of like financial gains. But the more I started to look, the more I started to find things, and that was just stuff that I had personal public access to that was archived on the private moderator subreddit.
Mm.
But the further I went down the rabbit hole, the more little skeletons I started to find down there.
Mm. So let's go back right to the beginning. You join the team. You get in there. You're obviously very sprightly. You told me about this. You said you wanted to make a difference. You wanted to implement some new rules. You felt there was areas for improvement in the subreddit, and you wanted to really, propose them. And all the chat logs and all the Skype dump that I saw, you actually seem to be a very active participant. Yet there was a
Hmm.
lot of resistance to you suggesting these rules. Now, first of all, on what grounds? Because publicly moderators present this united front that, if one person makes a ruling, pretty much everyone abides by it. Rarely they contradict each other. Yet behind closed doors, there you were trying to suggest rules and, hey, maybe we could revise this. You were making rules that you felt the community would benefit from or that the community would like, and each time you were being told by several moderators that your opinion didn't matter for whatever reason. So,
Yeah. Basically, I was told that it wasn't that my opinion didn't matter, it's that my opinion wasn't valid. They said that I hadn't been around long enough to really understand how it worked. And I mean, there was a couple things that, sure, maybe I didn't understand, like the very specifics of the voting system or how like Reddit works behind the scenes in terms of CSS and stuff like that. But I think what I could understand, at least on a base level, is what should and shouldn't be allowed on the subreddit. Because at that point, I had had previous conversations where someone would bring in a thread saying, should I delete this? This was one of the other new moderators. They'd come in and say, I found this thread. I'm not 100% sure whether it's, against the rules. Here's the rule that I think it might be breaking. What do I do? And I'd say, I don't see anything wrong with that thread. It's still within the rules. It's it could some people could not like it, but I mean, it's not breaking any rules like deliberately. And then another mod came in who was on the team for longer and would just say, "No, get rid of it. I don't like it." And I'd say, "Well, it doesn't break the rules." And they'd say, "It doesn't matter. I don't like it." And they just get rid of it. And they would be the one to make that judgment call.
but they've publicly said that there's a process of voting, that it is a democracy, but amongst the moderators. But you're telling me individuals would just remove stuff from the subreddit based on a whim, based on how they felt about something, and there would be no recourse if there was another mod present like yourself, because you didn't have seniority or?
Basically, what the thing with the Reddit system, the way it actually works fundamentally for the mods is anyone can go in and do anything so long as they have the permission to do it. So
Mm,
the only thing that happens is the the bureaucratic red tape behind the scenes in the Skype call where we're having the discussion about things. And so if they don't get anyone saying, like, for example, there was a thread that, was, I thought it broke the rules, wasn't 100% sure, posted it
mhm,
in the Skype chat at, like, I don't know, 3 a.m. Eastern time. Everyone else was asleep at that point. No one was responding. No one said anything. So I couldn't even make a vote. And that was one of the biggest problems with the voting system was you could only poll the people that were there. So if I
right.
waited for people that I knew would disagree with something to leave, I could basically do what I wanted. I could either delete a thread or have the thread stay based on exactly who was there at the time.
Mm.
And that was one of
But
the hugest issues I could find.
But there was moderators that had influence over other moderators. So,
Yeah.
for example, there were senior guys like Buckeye and Lilybet and obviously Korean Terran as well.
Yeah, and poor Leno
That's
as well.
and Paul Leno, and they all seem to have more say than the rest of the moderating team.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how they would steer discussions?
For the most part, it was basically. I think a really great example was that big Narzi's thing that kind of exploded. When that
Mm,
when that issue first came up, I think it was Adagio Summoner, as she goes by on the Reddit.
yeah.
She basically brought forward the link and said, "Can someone watch this for me? My internet's not working super great. I can't watch it. Can someone tell me what's going on? I'm getting a lot of reports." So I think it was me and Pick Flute that watched it, and we started watching it, and I'm like, halfway through the video, I'm like, okay, it's fine. There's, he's very sarcastic and has a lot, like, really, like, I guess, yeah, just a sarcastic way of talking about everything. But I mean, his
Mm,
points were valid. He was making a constructive argument. He might, it was obviously being somewhat disparaging of someone else, but he had some basis for it. Most of it, if not all of it, was based in fact. And then
mm,
that last little bit comes in where he starts to say his personal opinion. And at that point, some of the mods are saying, I think it's fine. The last little bit, he gets a little bit of opiniony about it, but I think it's fine. And that was the general consensus at the time. And then Korean
mm.
Terran came in, and Adagio Summoner was finally able to watch the video, and they said, "Oh no, this is a witch hunt." But I said, "Well, it's his opinion." At the end, he's stating his opinion on the matter. That can't possibly be a witch hunt if he's made a whole video saying why there's reason not to like this company and why there's reason not to like their actions. Then at the end, he says, "Well, a lot of people claim it doesn't work. I
Mm.
don't like their company. I don't like the way they've handled things, and I think it's complete bullshit."
I
And,
mean,
and they took it
that was
away.
the thing. That was the thing that interested me because, again, and I've got proof of this. I've seen the logs. The moderators actually seem to agree that first of all, What the Fast were a dubious company. Second of all, that video was fine, and
Hmm.
then they only seem to change their minds after Adagio Summoner was contacted directly by Voyboy on Skype, and
Yeah.
she said you need to go through the mod mail. And then after that mod mail was received, the tone of the moderator chat seemed to change,
Yeah.
with Korean Terran as well, very much wanting to lead a charge for removal. Now, why would you think that? So, because again, I know you were in the chat at the time. You were talking to these guys. Why was that? Why was there a change? I mean, do you believe they were influenced by a celebrity, if you like?
I mean, I think it's unfair to say that Voy Boy's comments had absolutely no influence because, of course, anyone talking about any kind of issue is going to have some influence on the way you perceive it, whether you like it or not. Whether he was the direct influence and the direct decision, I can't really say for sure. But what I can say is that the second that those two individuals, Korean Terran and Adagio Summoner, started coming back and talking in the chat about it, there was an immediate reversal of the situation. Even people like Pickflute, who had seemed to be agreeing with me at the first little discussion that we had,
Well,
saying that
he
we should
does.
keep this up.
He quite vocally agrees with you.
Yeah. So we were both on the same page. Like, this is fine. Some people might think it's a little rude or, a little too sarcastic for them, but like, there's nothing wrong with this being here. It's
Mm,
fact and then a little bit of opinion at the end, and there's nothing wrong with that. And at
mhm,
this point, the moderator said, we need to censor this guy's opinion because it's not based in fact. I'm like, well, you have people on the front page doing this kind of stuff all the time in more innocuous ways, but you keep it.
mm,
They say things that are wrong about tech support stuff, but they hide it in a relevant thread so the no tech support rule shit doesn't cover it because nothing covers anything if you put it in a valid thread. So the whole rule system starts to just immediately fall apart. And that's where some people like Korean Terran, I think one of the quotes he said to me was that it's better for mods to act outside the rules, because this was when I was proposing making some more new, like more well-defined rules. I said, we could add some of these new rules. We could make things a little more consistent, not just for us, but what others can post. If they read the rules, they'll be able to understand what they can and can't get away with. It'll make our job easier. It'll make it more clear for the users. And a Korean Tear said something along the lines of, yeah, but if you add more restrictions, it's harder to work outside the rules. As if that was his main way of operating, which seemed almost silly to me considering what moderators are supposed to be.
So hang on. So just for clarity here, Korean Terran, a senior moderator and someone who is responsible for 50% of all moderator actions in February, says that he wants to keep rules purposefully vague so he can operate outside of them. Is that a fair
Pardon?
summary? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah,
That
basically.
so
Like he would. There was even a time when we were talking about the rules again, and he
mm,
proposed his own set of rules where he added arbitrary rules that made almost no sense to me. That effectively said, if your content is this kind of content that is currently, perfectly fine in the subreddit, if it fit within that little box that Korean Terran didn't like, he was proposing rules to just outright ban it. Like those videos where they Photoshop faces over people in popular like viral videos and puts up like fake subtitles to it.
mm,
He said those videos would just be outright banned just because he didn't like them.
literally just because he didn't like them.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so what's going through your mind while you're having conversations like this? You've been in the mod team for a very short amount of time, and my understanding is Korean Terran tried to take you under his wing a little bit, try and teach you about
Yeah, a little
moderation.
bit. I mean, he was
Okay.
one of the first few people that I approached just because he seemed to be one of the most active, and he happened to be one of the people that was around when I first made that post about the rules, like I was saying earlier, where poor Leno had basically said, "You shouldn't be making rules. I didn't even put in the effort to read your proposal, but I think it shouldn't be here anyway." That
Mm,
was who I went to because he happened to be around at the time, and I had a couple conversations with him, and the more I talked to him, the more I realized that I don't know if I can really ever be part of this team. Like this guy is he's way out there in what he thinks the moderating team should be doing. And the
mm.
more I started talking to others, I started to notice a lot of trends that they were thinking the same way too.
I've got a screenshot here, which I've never published. Can you? I'm hoping you can verify the veracity of this as you sent it to me. Um, it's a conversation between you and Korean Terran, and he says, "I hope you've at least." This is what he says to you. I hope you've at least sort of accepted that mods just have a lot of power and that there isn't much people can do about it. Accepting is the first step. Can you verify that that conversation took place?
Yep.
What do you think he meant by that?
If I can recall correctly, I mean, I don't have access to these anymore, but we'll get to that, the
We'll
reason
come to
why
that in a
later.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically, I'm pretty sure this was about talking about when we were making new rules, and he was saying that they have a lot of power. They can effectively do what they want and act outside the rules, because the way Reddit's set up is it's almost set up in a way where you can make your own little clubhouse. But the
Mhm.
problem is the League of Legends subreddit's become a little more than a clubhouse. It's come to a point where it's a central focal point for a community and its content.
Mhm.
So I think what he was basically trying to get at, as far as I could tell, was that he had a lot of power and he was going to use it how he wanted to use it, whether it fit within the rules or not, because that tended to be how he operated. Was he would act in the gray areas just outside the rules and enforce his own opinions on how it should be run.
Mm. I mean, Korean Terran, obviously, as I said, he was a hugely active moderator. He did say a lot of very dubious things. I've gone through all of the Skype chat logs that we've got. I posted one of these earlier today. You
Hmm.
asked him the question about the leaks issue, which was, if somebody posted, and this is your quote. Based on Skype chat logs and some conversations in his TeamSpeak, Broken Shard told me and confirmed in a serious tone that he has been offered a position in North America on the TSM starting lineup to play jungle for them as they move forward in benching Santorin for a personal issue, which Broken Shard has also confirmed. And he said, if that was posted, I guess it'd get removed. Maybe I'd let the discussion play out a little bit. And then you asked him based on what rules, and he said, I'm not sure. It'd probably actually be a 50-50. Maybe I just hope that it doesn't get upvoted. And then you asked him, and if it does, he said, I'd be disappointed in the community and then go on my way. So, again, everything I've read from this Korean Terran points to him being someone who's on a massive, I'm loath to use the term power trip. I almost think that underplays it a little bit. But this is a guy who is, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this seems to be a guy who's very hyper aware of the authority that he has in a sizable subreddit. And he's saying here that he's happy to operate outside the rules and effectively abuse that power based on his own personal preferences. Was that the impression you got from your interactions with him?
More or less, yeah. Even in that issue, I had actually posted I think somewhat similar, question to the rest of the group, and most people said, well, I mean, like the new people obviously all said, well, if that thread was posted, I wouldn't have any grounds to remove it. It doesn't break a rule. But Korean Terran was one of the few people who uniquely, I think it was him and possibly Adagio Summoner. I'm not 100% sure, but at least one or two other people said that they would consider deleting it, even though it, clearly didn't break any single rule that they had. But he just felt that he didn't want it there, so it wouldn't be there.
What are your overall thoughts? Because again, look, I feel like Korean Terran is such an interesting character in a lot of ways that we could talk about him for almost the entire show. This is a guy who, like I say, he was effectively pushed out of the NBA subreddit because he wanted to propose a bunch of changes there. In fact, when I was writing this article about him, which is why I'm being accused of doxing him, let me just see if I've got it to hand. I will. Here we go. NBA mods. Let me just check this one. So, hang on. Which comment was it? So here you go. I won't name the moderator who sent me this. Obviously, I wrote to the NBA moderators, and I said, I'm writing an article about a former subreddit moderator of yours, an interesting character called Korean Terran. Now, you'll be able to verify this, Platt. Did he say to you that he'd been overthrown by the NBA moderators, that it was a coup d'etat?
Yeah, that was actually the exact phrasing he used. He said he got cooed, in his own words.
What do you think he means by that?
I think he probably did what he tried to do in the League of Legends subreddit by being almost a pervasive figure. Like, honestly, there's nothing, I don't have any like bad feelings about the guy. Like, he was a nice guy, but like the way he moderated was just, it was silly. It made no sense. He was almost just playing like a little sick game with the subreddit and how he would interpret the rules to suit what content he liked and didn't like. And I would assume that he tried to do something similar in the NBA subreddit, where he would be the most active and most pervasive person there. So it would be very hard to kind of forcibly remove him. So he probably felt that he was practically running it, and he almost practically was running the r/League of Legends subreddit.
Well, I'll read you what they sent me. This is one message I received. It said, I asked why he went, and I said to them, he seems to believe he was overthrown. And they said there seemed to be a turning point for him when he began to insistently push some radical ideas of turning the sub into a text-only, self-post mode and removing all multimedia content posts. Pretty much all of the mods unanimously disagreed with that, and he became moody for a few days/weeks, not sure how long. Eventually, he made an unexpected public announcement that he was going to step down as mod. I can't say for sure that's the reason he stepped down, but it definitely appeared to have played a large role. I'm not sure what he means about power mods. I'd asked him. He said he hates power mods. As any drastic changes on the subreddit are discussed thoroughly here prior to implementation. Interesting how a real subreddit works, isn't it? But there was another message here, which I'll just open. And they said the main objection was that it literally was the multimedia content issue. He was trying to force discussion by banning media, which would effectively neuter what makes this subreddit enjoyable, in our opinion. There really weren't that many disagreements overall, but the ones that did occur, he was extremely stubborn in his ideas and how they needed to be implemented. I have no idea what his intentions when he joined the LOL subreddit were. So what I found by doing some cursory investigations into this guy was this is a guy who, as he says, he moderates for fun. And he likes to be attached to big and busy subreddits, and he likes to implement his ideas within those subreddits. And
Hmm.
didn't he link you to was it like a manifesto or something about how he would change League of Legends?
He sent me his own personal version of the rules that he had made, which were, he said, based off of the NBA rules, which I would assume is based on the rule set that
Mm,
he got kicked for trying to propose of removing multimedia. But it was very similar in the sense that a lot of the multimedia aspects that are posted on League would be either restricted or just not allowed. Just like that
mm,
type of videos I was telling you about earlier. And what's actually interesting is there's actually a mod from r/league in the chat right now on Twitch, and he's saying that he doesn't run the subreddit, but I'd just like to point out right now ahead of time that in the month of February, Korean Terran had over 50% of all human moderator actions on the subreddit.
mm.
So
Are
he
we able to
was,
bring that up, actually? Have you sent the screen to Sam?
yeah, it's in the current one we're in.
Yeah,
It's in the
Sam,
second quote.
can you just bring this up on screen for us? So you'll need to talk. I mean, you'll need to talk me through it, but I imagine the viewers as
Yeah.
well. What we're actually looking at here. So I'll watch the stream and just wait for it to come up. Sam, can you
Hmm.
confirm if it's up yet? Sam, yeah, it's up. Okay, cool, excellent, great work, Sam. Thought you'd fallen asleep, mate. Um, so we're bringing up the screen now. So I'll let you know when it's up. It should be up now. Yep, we're just gonna maximize this, make it full screen so everybody can see the intimate details. So what are we actually looking at here, Platt? What are we
So
looking at?
basically, if you ever moderate a subreddit, you can go and pull out this information, which
Mm,
lists every kind of moderator action you could make. So, inviting a mod to join, removing a thread, approving a thread, banning a user,
mhm,
approving a comment, removing a comment, all the other under the hood stuff, muting people, banning people, whatever you can think of, it's listed in here somewhere.
mhm,
And so what this is a spreadsheet of all of the actions of all the different types for all of the human moderators. So if you look at the bottom, you can actually see where I unticked the box beside auto moderator. I don't know if it shows up in the frame that we have, but
okay.
I basically unticked the boxes for all of the robots basically because there was three of them in the subreddit.
Mm,
And then I did the frame that we're looking at here is from approximately when I joined to the day of when I took this, which seems to be the 27th of March.
mhm,
And if you look on the right, you can see the percentage contribution as well as the total number of actions for each individual moderator.
mhm,
And you'll notice that there's quite a few zeros and ones for the percentage side, and that's people who've contributed, 1% or so few that they don't even round up to 1%. And you can actually look at who those people were. And going down the list, you'll notice a lot of popular names like Adagio Summoner and Buckeye Sunday who have 1 or 0% of moderator actions. And then you'll see our good friend Korean Terran basically carrying the moderator team with
mm,
30% of the actions and all the other big numbers. So Pick Flute, Sarabots, the XLNQ, all of
mm,
them have very like disproportionately large contributions, but those are all the new moderators that joined when I joined.
mm. Well, I was going to
And
say, didn't Pick Flute come through with you?
yeah, Pick Flute, Sarabots, and the XLNQ guy. They all came in at approximately like the same day or within 24 hours of when I joined. And if
Mm,
you actually exclude their contribution and just count all the other mods, so also excluding the few people from the second round who had joined at this point, you can actually take them all in and you'll see that Korean Terran contributed 50%, over 50% of those actions. So excluding the new blood, Korean Terran, if you only look at the list of old moderators, is still contributing 50% of their actions.
mhm. So let's we'll talk about what these numbers mean in just a second. And Sam, keep this up. I'll let you know when to remove this screenshot if you're awake. That is. Now, first of all, I'm allegedly a moderator of some subreddits. Don't take it down, you cunt. Put it back up. There you go. Right. We're allegedly, I'm allegedly a moderator of some subreddits. What does it mean when a head moderator, who is the vocal face, the vocal, the voice, the face, if you like, even though we don't know who the fuck he is because we're not allowed to, Why is it when someone like Buckeye Sunday, who's like the most vocal moderator, and a guy who is the guy who recruited all of this new blood and was bemoaning how moderator staff weren't pulling their weight and that he needed a new team. Is it normal for somebody in that kind of position of authority to have 0%
I,
moderate? You know,
I
it
have no
seems
idea
strange
if
to
it's
me.
normal, but I mean, at the very least, I think we can all agree that it's definitely an extremely low contribution to the rest of the team. And I actually had a conversation with a couple of the mods on Reddit
Mm,
today, and I'm assuming they didn't go through and delete everything like they've been doing for the past couple of days. They were basically saying, "Oh, well, Buckeye does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and that's fine." But there's a lot of other moderators on this list who aren't really nearly as involved as Buckeye behind the scenes, because you can always pretend that there's something behind the scenes. But for some of these
mm,
mods, they're contributing 1, 0, 3. Like I contributed 3, and I was basically just pulling along long enough to make sure that I wasn't going to get yelled at, and I was still
mm,
beating all of these other contributors. And effectively, it seemed that like they basically brought in these new people to just do the mod queue stuff, which is whenever you report a threat, it shows up in a long list of posts like they talked about on that front page post today, and it
mm,
tells you what it got reported for, how many reports it has, and you can click on the thread, go look at it, and figure out, do I want to keep this? Do I want to delete it? But
mm.
there's people like Adagio Summoner who are also extremely vocal in the community who 1%. Only 273 actions out of 17,000 by the group.
Mm. So, just to clarify, on the far left, I don't mean politically, but on the far left, the very first column, what is that? The
I,
little guy with the little red circle. Is that bans?
I would assume it's bans. I can go and double check that right now,
Could
actually.
you double check what that is for me, please?
Yeah. Just one
But I
second
didn't.
here, because
No
I'm
problem.
pretty sure it's bans. It's very likely to be bans. Let me just double check right here. Just going on to this other
Yeah,
subreddit
no
and
problem.
checking.
You do what you need to do. I think accuracy is incredibly important. I
Yep.
wouldn't want to put out any propaganda or misinformation.
Yep. So that far left icon is ban user.
Okay, so that is ban user, the far left icon.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me, and again, this is why I want to talk about the numbers specifically. So there seems to be people that ban in a very officious manner, in a manner that doesn't seem in line with the number of actions they take overall. So, for example, we can see XLNQ only banned 3 people and was actually quite active to 12%. Yet
Hmm.
Pickflute, who just joined the team, and we established earlier in this broadcast that new moderators weren't supposed to be as accepted as the old guard. They
Hmm.
had less authority. He's banned 31 people.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I actually wasn't 100% sure what the policy was for banning, or how we were supposed to go about doing it. But
Mm,
I managed to ban one person. If you look in the list, you could see I banned one person, and it
mm,
was because no one else was on, and he was very clearly just spam posting link after link after link of his own YouTube channel, which he had been
okay.
warned for because God forbid the Reddit spam rules. So
Mm.
had to enforce it, had to ban him, and it sucks for him, but that them's the rules. But what I think is most
So,
concerning is people like Enigma Blade who have
yeah,
they have
3% of
30 bans,
actions.
and I think that's more to do with the fact that that's what Enigma Blade's like main job in the team is he
Mm,
looks and basically looks for people doing suspicious stuff, puts little warning tags on people to be like, watch out, this guy might be spamming and stuff like that.
mhm,
That tends to be more of what he did. And even then, he still has 3% moderator actions. So if you look at the
mm,
like removed and approved threads, he still has quite a bit of activity there compared to other people who have no bans. Like there's someone called Avada Link in this who just didn't do anything. They were
mm.
completely inactive, 0 all the way across the board. And the fact that
Why?
they're allowed to stay on the team is just crazy to me.
Yeah, so why do guys like Miles Lol and Avada Link and Husa Kiwi, why are these people allowed to retain their moderator status? Do you have any insight into that?
As far
Was
as
it
I
ever
was able to
discussed?
figure out, yeah, as far as I was able to figure out while I was there, I think it had more to do with the fact that Buckeye didn't want to remove people from the team.
Hmm.
But I mean, even then, it's like there was actually certain things that you're awarded by staying on the team, right? Like we saw with the Timo hats, and all the moderators were given Reddit gold or whatever
Hmm.
that even does. Like just random stuff like that for being on the team, even though they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there basically taking up a spot on the list of moderators on the subreddit. And I think it's quite silly because I was even talking to Korean Terran one time, and this was one thing I agreed with him on, was he said that there's a ton of people who just sit on the team to be like, oh yeah, I'm a mod of r/lol, just to have that notoriety, but they don't actually moderate. And he said if you were to name a few people to just kick from the team, he would list the people that you can look in the list and see. Avada Link, Asian Egg Lover, who's the Kiwi, all the people who really haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the people that he would just say, you can't be on the team if you're not going to do anything.
So just before we do move on, and we will move on from the numbers, again, we can clearly see here that Korean Terran he seems to be able to pretty much do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He's the most active moderator by some distance, and this wasn't abnormal. So
Hmm.
how problematic do you find it overall that a moderator who spoke to you quite openly about how he didn't feel Reddit should be a democracy, how he didn't feel users knew how to govern their own subreddits, somebody that was inherently distrustful and said journalists had it too easy on Reddit when actually all rules point to the contrary, someone who admits he would operate outside of the rules as often as possible, how problematic was it for you when you saw these numbers and realized that this individual with this outlook was actually the guy that was largely dictating League of Legends content?
Yeah, I think it was honestly that was one of the secondary red flags. This guy was somehow able to sit within the team, not be a like top moderator in terms of like the hierarchy of the mods, because there was I think three classifications you could get. There was full time, part time, and I think facilitator was the top of the top.
Mm.
Those were people like Buckeye who help, and then I think poor Leno as well, who helped to do a lot of the CSS behind the scenes stuff and a lot of the other non-directly mod queue related things. And he managed to not be on the facilitator list, and yet he was the most active by far of all moderators. And I think what's really interesting is back during that William Turton thing, he was the one that asked William Turton for sources, and he claimed to me afterwards that it didn't matter if he got a source or not from William Turton, but he wanted to just know if it was right or wrong, as if it mattered. And
Mm.
I told him, we're not moral arbiters here. Our job is, does it fit within the rules? If
Yeah,
so, it
well,
gets to stay.
we'll come to the moral arbiter moment in a minute,
Oh
but
yeah.
just one final point from the statistics. I mean, first of all, I think we can deduce quite safely. Obviously, Enigma Blade seems quite trigger happy on bans, and certainly I found it to be quite an aggressive presence within the subreddit. When I initially started having problems with the subreddit, it was Enigma Blade that was leading them. It was him, Jiraxo, and Buckeye were the three people I clashed with in
Hmm.
particular. But how problematic should it be that Pick Flute, with 19% of actions, despite being a new moderator, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is a guy who's just joined the team. You tried to say, let's change policy, let's revise the rules, and you got told you had no right to do that. And yet here's
Hmm.
Pick Flute here banning people left, right, and center, and being the second most active moderator despite having only just joined.
I think that had more to do with him joining from being, I guess, I think he might have moderated a bunch of other subs, which I mean isn't uncommon for the mod team. But what I think is the most interesting of this whole thing is that there's actually a very, very specific like, code of practice, so to say, like a set of like a procedure, so to say, of how and when to ban someone. Step one, warn them. If they, keep messing around and breaking whatever rule they were breaking, you give them a 1 week ban. They message you back after a week, you unban them, and if they screw up again, permanent ban. And
Mm.
what was interesting is he seemed, according to this, it seems that he found a lot of people breaking those rules. So he was either very, very keen to ban people, or was just you know, giving out
Mm.
too many of those 1 week bans, because I guess those would also count, considering they're basically a permanent ban that can get repealed because it's linked, like associated with a mod mail where they can respond and say, okay, you can unban me, it's been a week. So I'm assuming that's probably what it was he gave a lot of people these 1 week bans for like the second stage.
Mm. Let's just quickly revisit that Turton thing. Sam, thanks. I think we can drop the stats now. So you brought up this William Turton thing, and again, just to give an appraisal of what happened, this is where William Turton published a story, which was contradicted by MYM. It was subsequently proven by myself and other Daily Dot people that it was an accurate story. But Korean Terran pulled the story and publicly said he pulled the story because he didn't have any sources, and MYM staff members had contacted him and contradicted the veracity of the report. So he therefore couldn't allow it to go on the subreddit as it was misleading. This prompted William Turton to leave the Daily Dot Esports team. He now writes in the political team on the same publication. Now, I've read numerous, I'm looking at them here, numerous chat logs where you brought this up with him. And as you rightly say, he didn't seem to have any remorse about effectively driving a journalist out of the scene because of his behavior and because of his desire to challenge what a journalist was publishing. What's your take on that whole incident and Korean Terran's reaction to it?
So as far as I could tell, the biggest issue I had with this whole thing was one, he basically asked for a source when accuracy is not a rule. There's no rule that says your post must contain 100% accurate and relevant information, because that's just not part of it. The closest you can get is in the vaguely written witch hunting rule, which basically says if you're gonna, make a claim that is potentially damaging to a person, you need to have some backup for it. But unfortunately, this rule is so vague that it can almost be interpreted to remove any single journalist's post about a roster move or any kind of player discussion at all. Because you could always say, oh, well, they didn't prove to me in any way that this guy 100% is leaving. So therefore it's witch hunting because it's ruining his career opportunities or something. And what I found crazy was that Korean Terran asked for the proof from MYM and Turton, and of course MYM saying, "Oh, we can make this shit up. Like we have both people on Skype where they're both contracted to work for us. We can just make whatever Skype log we want." And he's saying, "Okay, well, Turton, where's your rebuttal?" And Turton says, "I'm not giving you my source. I can't. My source is an anonymous informant, and I can't give them up." And he was like, "Well, that's too bad then." And he ended up removing the thread. He claims that in conversations with me, he claimed that didn't directly have anything to do with it. He wasn't saying, "Give me a source or else I will remove it." He was just saying, "Give me a source." But when it came down to the decision of whether to keep or delete that thread, he ended up taking it down for, as you said, a reason that seemed almost irrelevant to the moderator duty by just saying, well, he didn't give me concrete proof, therefore it doesn't belong, which seemed an almost a scary precedent to set for the subreddit.
So look, I'll wrap up the whole Korean Terran and other people's kind of direct involvement with suppressing stuff that went on at the sub. But I mean, ultimately, it seems like they did continually try and enter into discussions and debates about journalism, and they continually tried to overstep their boundaries about it. There's numerous things here where, I mean, Korean Terran says that he feels that journalists have it too easy. Any idea what he meant by that?
I think that he seems to exist in the world where he thinks that esports journalists don't actually get proof for when they run a thread or a story or an article or anything. Like, I don't think he fully understood that in order to get a story, you need to either approach someone or be approached by someone to give you, 100% concrete info. Because if you post that on whatever publication and it's wrong, then you get in a lot of shit. I don't think he realized the amount of putting yourself out there that the journalists had to do. So I think for some reason in his mind, he might have thought that people were able to just kind of put out whatever they wanted. And I honestly can't even, like, if that's not the case, and I very well could be wrong about how he thought. I'm not a mind reader, but if that was indeed the case, I have no idea, or it wasn't the case, I should say, then I have no idea what he could have possibly been thinking by journalists getting it too easy.
Well, look, here's what we'll do. I think we'll cut for a little break here, and we'll come back and we'll do another hour. I don't want to labor the point, but hopefully already people can see why you decided to sort of contact people about it, because there are some kind of questionable stuff here. So we're going to break for 5 minutes. We're going to come back after the break. We're going to talk about the NDA. We're going to talk about the witch hunting rule. And a whole lot of other stuff besides. So don't go anywhere. We are unveiling the LOL subreddit with Platypus. We'll be back in 5. Okay, we're back. This is a kind of Richard Lewis Report special. We're interviewing the LOL subreddit moderator that revealed all the various bits and pieces that we put into articles out on the Daily Dot. This isn't associated in any way with the Daily Dot. This is something that I'm just doing in my spare time for my Twitch channel. If you have any complaints or issues with it, you need to direct them to me. So just to get that out there for a, full disclosure. So back to Platypus. Now we were talking a little bit before about, in particular, one moderator, but I want to kind of diversify and take the focus away from Korean Terran, as active as he was. And I think, people can now see why he chose to stand down before we started disseminating this information into the public. It wasn't about bullying him. It wasn't about doxing him. This is somebody who has consistently abused their power and has made no bones about it, and has said so in a way that is, of course, capturable. And we will put all of this out into the public. But what we want to talk about now is the witch hunting rule, which seems to be one of the biggest bones of contention on the subreddit. It comes up quite frequently. We've already talked about an incident with the What the Fast matter where Nazis, a League of Legends content creator, brought up some very valid concerns about What the Fast, its veracity, and some of the ethical practices that they have engaged in as a business. It was removed after being contacted by a person who was sponsored by What the Fast. The mods raised no eyebrow about the conflict of interest whatsoever. Literally not one person in any of the moderator chat says, hang on a minute, isn't that individual sponsored by What the Fast? Yet consistently, there were a number of posts, a number of articles, a number of videos that were brought down on the grounds of witch hunting, including that What the Fast video. So what are your thoughts on the witch hunting rule? It seems to me to be a blanket catch-all to remove anything that's even vaguely critical of parties that have almost like a positive relationship or a vested interest in being able to use the League of Legends subreddit.
Yeah, I think on paper or like even just in thought, the witch hunting rule does have a good point, right? Like if I make a thread being like, I really fucking hate Richard Lewis and I would like him to just not ever exist in this world ever again, and here's a bunch of reasons why, and I hate him. I think someone should just go and hunt him down. Like, so you could write all that wacky shit, and obviously the witch hunting rule definitely applies. You're inciting that, people should go and kill you or whatever, like all sorts of crazy stuff. And that would obviously be directly within the limits of the witch hunting rule. But where I take issue with the way the rule itself is worded is that it says that I'm actually looking at it right now, and it says a witch hunt is a thread or comment that damages or threatens to damage a specific person or entity's reputation or resources. And that is extremely vague in terms of how they take it out. And there's actually no real proper examples of it. And there's actually an extended witch hunting policy where they say like the main three aspects of a witch hunt is a personal insult or attack, a call to action based on information presented, or any personal information such as, the infamous doxing, which obviously never really happened. And I think the biggest issue with this is there's so many different like long-reaching strands to this rule that it can almost apply to anything. And that at that point you've got the moderators who are very, they've proven to, time and time again that they're very willing to work outside of the direct letter of the law here and do what they think a rule, what they in their personal opinion thinks a rule means instead of what the rule literally means on paper. And that's when you get a lot of issues, such as all the daily dot threads just being removed for arbitrary reasons. Obviously a witch hunt by the mods in some capacity, whether they basically copped to it yesterday saying that they were auto flagging things, and they're basically instigating their own witch hunt. And at that point, it seems almost ridiculous that by simply saying, I don't like this company, I don't think their product works very well, and I don't think that what they did in the past was good, just because you're in a sarcastic, more aggressive tone, that somehow that's witch hunting. Like that Narzi's video is one of the best examples of a video that just so closely sits on the line in their opinion, which it really shouldn't be sitting on any line. It's a perfectly valid video.
But I looked at some of the recent removals for witch hunting. They seem very odd and inconsistent.
Hmm.
I myself don't really understand what the witch hunting rule actually is. Now, I've been accused of witch hunting multiple times. I got accused of witch hunting when I wrote about an organization withholding money from its players.
Hmm.
They said I was witch hunting the organization, and they removed an article about that. That just blows my mind. I can't believe they think that's witch hunting. What sort of
Yeah.
conversations were taking place in the mod chat when it came to the application of this rule specifically?
It almost seemed like every other person had their own opinion of what was and wasn't witch hunting. It almost seemed like, it almost seemed like like that, exactly that, an opinion. They say everyone's got an opinion, and when it came to the Reddit moderators, everyone had their own version and interpretation. Like that Narzi's post, there was one mod that says it was witch hunting. There was one mod that said it was witch hunting because of another part of the video. There was a couple mods that said this isn't witch hunting. There was a couple that says it's riding the gray line, where I would just err on the side of caution and remove it. There was a massive spectrum of opinion, and this was just on one video. Like no one could even come close to a consensus on this. And it didn't even come down to a vote at that point. It just, got deleted.
Okay. But I find it interesting that the moderators did absolutely nothing about several, and I'll provide examples in a moment, but they seem to do nothing about witch hunting when it was about people that they had a grievance with. Sam, if you could just bring up the Reddit thread about Odie, for example. Now, for those that maybe don't know, if you're tuning in and you don't know anything about League of Legends, Odie is the owner and manager of Team Dignitas, a very prominent, well, the most prominent UK gaming organization. And of course, they have an LCS team. Now you will see here on my left, or to the left of your screen, I should say, you will be able to see that there was a thread: is Dignitas Odie unprofessional? And it speculates that he is unprofessional. Uh, I'm not even sure why, because he trash talks and insults people. It compares him to a dumb teenager. And he says, I have screenshotted it, and if you want pics, I will load them up. Now, and then he does. He's got a direct upload there. Now, this thread hasn't been deleted. In your opinion, is this not covered by the witch hunting rules? Because it seems to me it might be.
Yeah, I mean, in the way that they're written, you could very easily say that this is, according to the rules, damaging his reputation.
Mm.
But at the same time, this is, they basically just linked a picture of Twitch chat where chances are he probably called someone a cunt or something, because, that's what Odie does. He just kind of has a fun time in Twitch chat with people, messes around,
Yeah.
like, just like one of the guys or whatever however you want to call it.
Mm.
And if you're going to allow this kind of thread to stay up, it definitely sets a precedent for the level of tolerance that they have for directly insulting another person. Like
Mm.
it seems almost ridiculous.
I mean, look. I'm of the opinion I don't think you should necessarily delete that. But if you're going to
Hmm.
delete an expose on an organization not paying its players on the ground that it's witch hunting, I don't see how that thread can remain under the same rule. Perhaps there's a
Exactly.
better example. I'll skip to the next one. This is an attack that was made at the Daily Dot at a fellow writer of mine who I won't actually name, but if you go on the thread, you will be able to see it. This was a thread that was simply called, hang on, I'll get this right. Um, a fine example of what isn't journalism. So you can see here it links to a Daily Dot article about our most beloved Crepo. For those that missed the incident, Crepo was he posted some photos on Twitter, and one of them had somebody in what Americans refer to as blackface, what we in the UK call blacking yourself up. It's where you adopt the affectations of a black caricature in order to look black. Depending on where you are geographically, some people will take more of an issue with this than others. But I would say, for the most part, in Western culture, this isn't okay. Now, this was challenged. by a lot of Crepo fans and by Crepo himself, who made a twit longer about it. But that's fine. Again, I'm happy for the debate. Maybe people don't like the reporting, and I stress this wasn't anything. I didn't make this report. I had nothing to do with this report. It was just a report that was on the Daily Dot. Now, the this thread for some reason was allowed, and it says this is a fine example of the sports equivalent of tabloid writing. There's very little factual evidence in the piece. I mean, that's a complete lie. It's nothing but factual evidence, and it's written 100% for shock value. That speaks to intent. I'm not sure the average redditor can attest to what the intent behind an article is. Anyone who cares about the issue knew about it long before this was posted. Again, I don't know how you can possibly say that. And Crepo apologized for it and admitted his fault. Yeah, after the article was written. The main goals of the article are not to point out the differences in German and American culture. You're absolutely right, they're not. Nor should they be. Nor to talk about the greater issue of racism. Again, I'm not sure why that's appropriate. The goal of this piece is to personally drag Crepo through whatever mud he can find, and is nothing short of slander. Again, people using terms they don't understand, and the goal of the piece wasn't that at all. If the Daily Dot has any sense of journalistic integrity, they should retract this piece, unless, of course, they want to be the level of tabloid trash you see in line at the store. Now, I actually said to the moderators, I'm pretty sure this is witch hunting. And they kind of answered with, yeah, but what you going to do?
I think this is actually this person is demonstrably wrong, right? All it takes is 2 seconds. He says there is no fact. Well, if you look at the article and start scrolling down, you see two quote pictures of Crepo's Twitter where he said things, and then there's a direct quote from him and a full fucking statement from Crepo about the issue. It's full of factual evidence. That's all it stands on. And it's very clear this person just is out to slander the Daily Dot. And in this case, I'd say, according to the current witch hunting rules, this is definitely something you'd have to remove. And again, we get into the constant issue of inconsistency in the moderation team. Because whether a post gets deleted or approved, it ultimately comes down to who's online at the time and what their opinions happen to be. So if you have, 2 or 3 people that are online, maybe this gets posted at a time where people are at school or at work. If the people that are online at the time all say, this is fine, whether they're biased or not, that's what the vote is. That's the action that has to be taken by the mod team for the rest of the day. And unless someone higher up like Buckeye comes in and says, why did we approve this? I don't care that we had a vote. This is ridiculous. That's the only time you could really overthrow the vote. Because if the mod team makes a public decision like this to keep something more inflammatory like this up, then you get into this really odd gray zone where every rule can, or every choice can be subverted later on, and that's something that obviously they want to avoid. So I'm assuming that this was probably voted on.
Would allow these? I mean, for me, okay. Now I look. Maybe I am wearing tin foil here, Platt. So you can tell me if I am or not, right? Okay, but I seem to see a pattern here. So when people create a thread about a popular player, it gets removed for witch hunting. When people try and highlight that an organization is doing something wrong, it gets removed for witch hunting. If somebody complains about Riot or a rioter or a popular personality within League of Legends, it gets removed for witch hunting. Yet it seems that creating threads about a manager who was banned from the League of Legends subreddit, apparently that's fair game, and it's okay to label him unprofessional. And it also seems to be okay to ridicule and demonize a publication that has been responsible for more exposés in the League of Legends scene about Riot, about various organizations, about various corporate interests than any other single publication. Now, am I making a reach here to say that it's interesting? And
I think yeah, at the very least you can say it's interesting, right? You can never really fully say that, they're 100% out to get you. But what you can say is that there's a very noticeable trend in what threads they selectively remove or give trouble to. And I mean, even recently with some of, I think it was House Spiffing's articles, they removed a post and said, "Oh, this breaks the spoiler rule," even though the spoiler rule says no spoilers in titles. So not only was there no spoiler in the title.
We now know that the moderator was lying about that. It was removed because they had an auto remove in place,
Yeah.
put there by the Enigma Blade, and they admitted to this.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, that's another question, I guess. When you were part of
he's.
the
I mean,
moderation,
he said it was an auto remove. Pardon?
yeah, he did say it
Oh
was an
yeah.
auto
Sorry.
remove, and then he
Yeah. He
changed
corrected
it.
himself, but I mean, whether we don't really know which one was true, right?
Well, it would make sense. Every article we put
Yeah.
out since I've been banned from the subreddit has actually been removed at some point on the Daily Dot if it goes into that League of Legends subreddit. And I find this interesting because they said that was to prevent public information from going into the posts. Now, can you imagine any cause that I might have for putting public information about moderators in a post about, I don't know, elements making a roster change, or are there any moderation grounds that you can think of
There's nothing
that
that I
would
can
warrant
think
banning of a
of where
publication?
there's nothing I can think of where you would put that kind of information in a daily dot article of all things, right? There's not only does that have to go through editors, but like you're really riding a line with what you're allowed to get away with there. You know, if you're ever going to do something like that, which I honestly don't think you would, then I mean, you would have to put it on like your Twitter or one of your own personal ways of getting things out there. You wouldn't be able to use Daily Dot as a platform for something like that because then you're starting to get into illegal territory where they could actually get fined or get in trouble from that kind of stuff. And so it's obviously a huge overreach to make that kind of action.
Um, let's talk about inconsistency. It was a bit of a bugbear for you. I think it was actually probably more likely one of the things that pushed you over the edge than
Yeah.
anything else. And that was that on one day something was getting removed, on other days something similar, if not identical, wasn't. Some people were sitting in the mod chat and saying, that actually I disagree with that, and or we should remove this because it's this individual. Talk me through the inconsistency, why it occurs, and give us some examples.
I think the definite biggest issue for inconsistency, as I said earlier, everyone has their own opinion on what the rules should and shouldn't be. You have some people like Korean Terran who are willing to interpret the rules as something far beyond what they are as written. And then you have people like me and a lot of the newer mods who were very much willing to, almost fixated on interpreting the rules as written, as they'd been consistently enforced. But whenever we got to a fringe case, of course, we would have to, make the choice because there's a lot of cases where the rules just they don't apply to anything.
Mm.
And so you have to make that decision. And that is where you get a lot of these inconsistencies because in the end it comes down to, well, I mean, who's around in the Skype call to talk about the issue, who's going to vote, and sometimes people wouldn't even vote because there was two ways we typically did votes. If it was a really big vote where we had to take a very calculated approach to it, it was usually done in the private subreddit called r/lol mods. And
Mm.
that subreddit was basically we would put forward case files for big, like higher profile bans, possible rule changes, new mod application stuff, like all the behind the scenes, more bureaucratic stuff. And for big votes, that was where it was done. But there was also times where it was in the mod mail where if you wanted to see a person get banned, you would say +1.
Mm-hmm.
+1 for banning, or you would say
Yep.
-1, or any indication that you could give to say I don't want this to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a very, very, very specific case I remembered, and it was actually your ban, which I'm sure we can get into later,
We will. Yep.
where when we did that vote, not only was it done in the mod mail, but it was, well, at first it was done in the mod mail, but it was done in the mod mail, and everyone would immediately flooded it with +1, +1, +1, +1, and there was no actual discussion being had about why people were saying +1, which was
Okay.
basically the equivalent of saying yes with, I guess, one less character. It might have even been another case, but basically they flooded it with +1s, and so they're like, okay, we're gonna do it, and so they would just instantly they would do it, and there was I think 3 or 4 people who had been on Skype actively talking about the topic who never voted.
Mm.
They just sat there quietly. They were the people who opposed it, but after seeing 5 to 7 people saying yes, they weren't going to bother saying no because it was over. Like
Mm.
there was tons of cases where I was talking to Korean Terran specifically, and I said, there was a vote on law mods today, and you didn't vote. It's like, yeah, I
Mm.
don't like going on there, and I don't like voting. I don't get bothered with it. I just pretty much ignore it whenever I can. And that was something that Buckeye had actually told him. You need to participate, Because if Korean Terran had his way, he would just sit in mod queue all day and clear it out all day. And a lot of the issues that happened were because of there was so many inconsistencies in just how people would even go about starting the vote. Like getting a vote to happen, you would have people who weren't participating, you'd have people who would recuse themselves for whatever particular reason, and it got to a point where there was almost as many people who would abstain as people who would vote no, and then you'd have, obviously a significant margin of people voting yes. So the
Mm.
people who had abstained for whatever personal reason or had just, not actually answered the vote, they could have easily swung it in either way. And so it ultimately came down to who decided to show up. There was
Yeah.
never really a proper, unique, consensus of decision ever. It was always just a weird amalgamation and this weird combination of whoever was on, who was active, who felt like voting, who, felt that they actually cared enough to take the time to look at the information. And when it came down to it, that's, I think, one of the biggest factors behind why you have all of these super inconsistent removals of threads.
Mm. Look, let's get to the NDA.
Yeah.
This is the juicy bit. Or maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I don't know. I have no idea what you're going to say. But one of the things that I did find problematic, and I still do, is any moderator needing to enter, literally needing to enter into an NDA to be fully effective, fully efficient, which is what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
with a company that has a corporate vested interest in the subreddit and the flow of information on that subreddit. During the aftermath of the story, when it came out that Riot Mods had signed an NDA, Riot Velocity, obviously a rioter, came out and said that, hey, we don't just use it for the discussing of server information, which was, of course, their big defense as to why it wasn't insidious and why it shouldn't cause any concern. They said that actually we only use it for that. It's no big deal. Look, here's what a chat looks like. It's nothing. It's nothing to worry about. And then Riot Velocity admitted that they have used it for marketing promotions, well, such as the Vel'Koz reveal. Now, if the Vel'Koz reveal isn't directly, hyping up a new character that you can buy in the game, if that isn't directly serving Riot's marketing agenda, I must have missed a fucking meeting. I must have slept through some shit when I was at school. Because that is clearly serving Riot's marketing agenda. They are hyping their own product. They are using the subreddit to do it. And the NDA enables that.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your thoughts? You're in the team. Everyone's like, hey, you're in the gang. Here's an NDA, by the way, that Riot like us to sign.
I think this craziest part about the NDA was I honestly saw no reason for it to even exist. Like I asked the mods, okay, why do we need the NDA? Like, when I asked for the NDA to get a hold of it in the first place to even see that it, actually existed, I said, well, what's it for? And they said, well, basically, there's what they call the NOC chat, and
Yeah.
it's basically a chat room with a lot of the network engineers for Riot and a bunch of other similar people who have the kind of information about server outages. And the general idea behind it is if there's a bunch of new threads complaining about server issues, instability, whatever, the mods can say to the server people, hey, I think there might be an outage. Look into it for us.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to find something. And then they would be able to have the Riot come back. And on the surface, this sounds like a good back and forth. But what the biggest issue that I saw was why couldn't they just, personally message a designated engineer or, a group of engineers to, without the NDA, just, in a personal chat between them and say, we're getting a lot of these comments. You guys should look into it and let us know if you find anything that would merit us putting a little sticky at the top to say that there's a server issue. And for some reason that was never, I guess, never thought of, or the only excuse that I could ever hear that where the Riot or the Reddit mods had actually argued for the existence of this specific framework for having a chat where everyone who enters must be under NDA. The only reason for that framework was that they said the only way to effectively get the information back and forth was using this specific room, which just seemed almost ridiculous to me because they're either not trusting their own employees to be able to do this on their own, or they're not trusting the mods, or like I just didn't see an actual reason to have this specific setup where they had to sign an NDA to get in. I didn't see why they couldn't just make, have a couple contacts where they would just say, I think there might be an outage, and have that little back and forth privately.
But why? Again, I don't understand why do. If it's just server information, again, explain this to me. I know you wouldn't sign the NDA because it lasts 3 years after you stop being a mod, right?
Pardon?
The NDA lasts 3 years after
Yeah.
you stop being a mod, so you
Yeah,
wouldn't
so after
sign
you
it.
stop entering, yeah.
So what I don't understand is why can't the information be communicated in another way? Why do you have to sit in a private Skype chat with Riot employees? Why do you have to do that for server outages?
Yeah, and that's exactly the question I was asking for the most part. Is there's no reason for that exact setup with the specific NOC room. Like you could very easily communicate all that information, and I mean the only way that I can think of is that Vel'Koz thing, right? It's
Mm,
the only channel that they can use where if the moderators are told something, because basically the way the NDA was worded was anything pertaining to the game, the marketing, any game aspect, any. There was even one clause that said that they couldn't communicate anything that was an idea or a methodology for how they solve problems. So even like anything basic could technically be covered by that.
mm.
And so it
So
almost
hang on,
gave a
hang on. They
framework
could
to set up that
they
Vel'Koz.
couldn't even they couldn't even divulge anything that would resolve issues publicly.
As far as I know, I can actually bring up the
Mm,
NDA right now and look at
okay,
it myself.
sure.
Um, yeah, methods, techniques, and processes. Like that's literally what it says is any information transmitted to the recipient by Riot or any of its employees, including but not limited to software, all works of authorship such as documents, artworks, music, etc., programs, algorithms, devices, methods, techniques, and processes, financial information and data, business plans, and it just goes on and on and on. So there was a clause that basically said if they told you a process of how they do something, it could theoretically be covered in this NDA. And while I'm sure it's very standard, the two parties that are signing this, that association is not standard by any means.
Mm. I mean, I reached out to other subreddits at the time. I couldn't find one other gaming subreddit or esports subreddit that are entering into an NDA with a game developer. Not one.
Hmm.
In fact, the Dota 2 subreddit had somebody that actually does work directly with Valve on their servers and whatnot, and still no NDA.
Hmm.
So this seems again, if they can make me understand why, I know Valve don't need to do it, Blizzard don't need to do it, Activision don't need to do it, but
Exactly.
but for some reason Riot do. So why is that? I just can't understand it.
Yeah, I honestly can't either, and that's my biggest concern with the whole thing. Like, I'm not against people signing NDAs. Like, this is a very lenient NDA as far as we
Mm,
understood from Bryce Bloom. Like, the terms are actually quite lenient in that you get out after 3 years of not being in this room. But I mean, the parties that were signing it almost made no sense for these two parties to need to be in this kind of disagreement.
mm. Um, let's just kind of wrap up the NDA thing then. So you like one of the defenses was that you were never pressured to sign it, that it was always made abundantly clear you didn't have to sign it, that you were signing it to gain another level of moderation privilege, that you could be a moderator in the subreddit, but if you wanted to be some sort of super elite moderator that had direct communication with Riot, you had to sign the NDA. What was was there any pressure applied to you? How did you feel about this?
I mean, there was definitely a little bit of pressure. Like, obviously, it was an optional NDA. Like, there is no person saying you must sign this. Obviously, that's, not the case. But at the very least, the fact that it existed is always going to exert some pressure because it gives you an in, right? If you ever
Mhm.
wanted to work with Riot, this is one of your ways in. Prove that you can go in this NOC chat. You can do what they would like you to do, not break a contract. It gives you part of what we were talking about before with there was numerous Reddit mods who had later become Riot employees, and this is a very very convenient avenue for them to do that. I mean, it's not obviously a direct invitation to go and join Riot, but it's definitely something to get some association with them. And I think
Mm,
that was one of the biggest pressures, I'm sure, for many people. Like, I had no intention of signing this, obviously, but I can very easily see a lot of others considering it because on the surface, there's no downside, right? You're getting
mm,
access to something you didn't have before. You can do your job better. You can be a better part of the team. You can be more useful. You can get Riot contacts because I know a lot of the Reddit mods are, they have a lot of different Rioters on their Skype. They're very communicative with them. They talk to them about all sorts of things, and I'm sure that that's very much part of it. And because they're under NDA, they're very trustworthy in terms of their information, right?
mm. But I mean, what do you think about the arguments that were made in the aftermath? I mean, everybody came out and said, "Hey, NDAs are fine. It's okay to sign NDAs. No, it's not a big deal. NDAs, they're nothing. They're really harmless. Actually, NDAs are just there to protect us because NDAs prevent disclosure." I mean, that has to be the most disingenuous representation of an argument I've ever seen in my life. The NDA itself, signing that bit of paper, does not prevent you disclosing information.
Hmm.
It does, however, give Riot legal recourse if you do, and arguably leverage if you elect to reveal something that you feel is ethically questionable. I mean, would you not agree
Exactly.
with that assessment?
Yeah, and that's just the thing with NDAs, right? Like by signing the NDA, all I get is I get into this NOC room and I can, get information on the servers that I can use to make more accurate little bars at the top saying that there's server outages. But
Mm,
I don't actually get anything out of this. Whereas if I screw up, if they can prove that I leak any information while I'm under an NDA, then I'm screwed. The
mm,
the terms are very clear in the NDA that if you breach it, not only can they go after you for financial compensation for the actual loss of information, but they can also go after you for all of their lawyer fees. And
mm,
that honestly could be even more than what the other stuff comes down to, depending on how expensive their lawyer happens to be.
mm. What about? I mean, did you think? I know. Again, this is just your. I'm not saying this. I'm asking you. Do you think there's like almost a bit of, hey, if you're willing to sign the NDA, that shows willingness that you're on the team, and that once you have done that, there's an opportunity there for you with Riot. I mean, we've seen numerous moderators, at least four, I think, get jobs at Riot, and we know that
Hmm.
Enigma Blade, who we've just seen is one of the most active in terms of banning people on the subreddit, he's actively applying for a job and was boasting about how, despite having no experience for the role he was going for, he was given an on the spot interview because of his time as a moderator. So, do you think that signing the NDA is almost like the first step in showing that you are complicit, you are willing to work with Riot?
I mean, it definitely could be, and that's I think one of the more concerning aspects of the NDA.
Hmm. Okay. Well, look, I mean, I can still see people in the chat are, oh, yeah, but don't break the NDA then. Don't break the NDA then. I think people are really missing the argument. I'm not saying they should divulge like how servers work or anything like that. What I'm saying is if they were to be told something that they found ethically questionable and wanted to share that information, they would be legally prevented from doing so. That's the
Yeah.
point.
I think one good example is a hypothetical example. Right now, they've announced those chroma packs for the skins, which is basically recolors for existing skins. And their current model right now is you buy three of them for the same skin for 590 RP. If, for example, a rioter said that they are doing this explicitly so they can get more money because there's no way to individually buy those chroma pack things for the skin colorations, they would be bound by the NDA and not allowed to talk about the fact that Riot is like directly going out of their way to screw their consumer base, even though they've very much argued that they want this to exist as a corporation that talks or a company that talks to its community and it makes this nice little almost argument for themselves to say, oh, we listen to you guys, we always take your feedback, but at the same time it could be very problematic because they're obviously they need to make money at the end of the day. Like
Mm,
that's something that needs to happen. And if you find something ethically concerning or you don't like their business model, then you're bound by this NDA to never be allowed to talk about it.
mm. So let's skip to, I mean, this is the fun part for me. So obviously when I got banned, it seemed very interesting, like from looking at the logs as to how it happened. What seemed to occur was I told a guy to grow. A guy told me to grow up. I said I laughed and linked to a post that said I've ruined my parents' life in off my chest. This quickly got spun because apparently the guy was suicidal or something and said he was going to kill himself. I don't even know. It was a throwaway account. This quickly got spun that I told a guy to kill himself. And there was a new moderator who'd been with the team for a very short amount of time, Sarah Bot, saying, oh my God, in the chat, like, we've got him. He's, you know, and they were linking to this post and everyone was like, oh my God, get a screenshot. Like it was the smoking gun.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after that, they said we need to take a vote on this. I've actually, hang on, I'll bring this up. I'm sure this will probably be someone's gonna cry about this, but fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. So this is where I get accused of doxing people, probably. So I just linked that to Sam, so you can bring this up. This is what happened in the aftermath of me getting banned, rather than just let the ban kind of stand on its own merits, which I thought was kind of weird. They basically just fucking went into, oh, we can't ban him yet. We need to spin it. What exactly did they need to spin?
I think what they wanted to do was try and spin the exact way that you proposed, this issue. Is because it was very obvious that they wanted to make sure that this didn't totally burn them or bury them. And the reason why Korean Terran was so against doing the ban at that moment was they didn't want you to get banned and then you to go on Twitter and say, oh yeah, so I got banned on Reddit, we should, burn the treehouse down. They obviously didn't want that to happen. They wanted to make sure that they could spin this in a way that it seemed like you deserved it, which in some aspects, I mean, you could very easily make the case. But the reason that they banned you specifically was a very targeted action. The second that they saw you take that misstep, they jumped on it.
So again, you were in the mods at the time. Just talk me through what happened, because it seemed really strange to me. Like, first of all, I know they had a vote in place, but they didn't even do the vote. Enigma Blade banned me 20 minutes before the vote even took place. He just jumped the gun and banned me, predicated on his own personal feelings towards me. So is there anything I'm missing here? Because it kind of feels like, I don't know, they jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah, they 100% did, because when they first made that assessment, they basically said they were going to ban you. Like that was the plan. We're going to ban Richard Lewis. They made a little case file post on the law mods saying, okay, here's instances of him being rude. This is him being, calling someone a retard or whatever. This is him. And then they, obviously linked the famous one where you allegedly told a suicidal person to kill yourself, which is completely ridiculous. I've actually seen it now, and there was even a point where you went back and made a comment to the person saying, why you made the post in the first place, and kind of defended your perspective and said, if he ever needs help to feel free to contact you if he felt the need to. And it was, a very obvious misstep where you had looked at the person's posting profile, saw something that you disagreed with, and said, I'm not going to take advice from someone in your position, not realizing the exact extent of the situation. But the biggest problem that I found with this whole thing was the second that they found it, they said, we have to make sure no one post about this, no one talk about it, just do it, get it done with. And even Enigma Blade stepped up and says, I want to be the one to do it, because he had a very personal vendetta with you. And
so said, they were fighting over the right to ban me.
Yeah. Basically, Enigma effectively called dibs on it, as far as I remember.
Okay. Seems a bit odd. I mean, look, I don't know. It seems to me that while they were very keen on banning me in the first instance, like, as I've made no bones, I don't want to be unbanned from the subreddit, by the way. And I voluntarily deleted my account. And it's their subreddit. Well, the one thing I will say is I respect their right to choose who can and can't use it. Provided there are valid reasons for doing so. I don't really have an issue with it. But after these articles came out, they really seem to go on the offensive, actually, quite a lot about me. And, they took to Twitter. They publicly kind of, smeared my name. They were very. They deleted the articles multiple times. In fact, they deleted the final article in that series of the information that you shared with me. They deleted it and said they deleted it, I believe, 11 times in total, and said they had a concern about public information being involved. And in fact, the moderators didn't even say that. Riot Triggs, the former moderator, said that. And he said Richard Lewis has threatened to dox the moderators. Now, one of my understandings about Reddit's privacy agreement is that moderators won't discuss your interactions with Reddit with people outside of Reddit. So why is a Riot employee speaking on behalf of the moderation team? I mean, that really did perplex me slightly.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea how it got to that point. Honestly, like there's always an argument to be made for some of these rules, but like it gets to a point where you start to find a lot of these inconsistencies, just like with the banning of all your content. They've gone and said, well, he's going to release personal information, and by constantly asserting that you were going to, dox the mods, they effectively said that, oh, Richard Lewis is crazy. He's going to dox us. He's going to put all our public information out there, and that in itself, they have yet to validate any of those claims with any actual threat. The closest that they came to even giving any evidence was a Twitter post where you were, venting about the frustrations of people being able to hide behind an alias when your alias is effectively your name, and you were, venting about it, and that's all the proof that they've offered for it.
The second wave of dox accusations actually comes from me saying I was going to write an article about Korean Terran, which I still think I should write.
Yeah, and
apparently, if I write about him and use his God-given name, I'm crossing some threshold into impropriety, even though we've done 1 hour talking about how this guy is some, deranged power mod who wants to basically subvert the core, tenets of what Reddit is about.
Yeah, and I think what's really crazy is he even told me in a personal conversation with him that he doesn't care if people get his information. He said he didn't care. His concern was that you were going to dox the other people, and I'm like, but he's not going to dox anyone. Like, is that so hard a concept for you to fathom? And he's like, oh no, Richard's like, I don't know, man. Richard's crazy. I think he'll do it. Just, make sure no one gets hurt. And when I admitted to the mods what I had done and explained to them why I had done it, Korean Terran kept going on and on and on about how, you were going to allegedly dox them all and get all their personal information and shit. And I kept explaining to him, there's no reason to do that. What do we gain from doing it? Like, yes, we make your life moderately less convenient, but there's literally no reason for him to do it. And yet they kept going on and on and on about how they, oh, we don't want Richard Lewis to dox us. He's going to dox us. And that's been almost their public defense ever since the articles have been coming out is, oh, well, Richard Lewis is going to dox us, so what he says doesn't matter. And it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that does seem to be a bit of it. Like I say, my biggest regret about the way this has panned out has been that I've given them a fairly easy straw man to hide behind. And what exactly. I think is, valid concerns that you've raised. My behavior's kind of obfuscated the real issue here. In fact, one of the things that Nazi said to me at the time, and I think he may have said this publicly, was that, I should have passed the story off to somebody else because having my name attached to it meant that we were never going to have a sensible debate about it, that Riot and Reddit were going to basically get together and draw ranks, and it was going to simply be about Richard Lewis is evil, he's banned, he is writing this as vengeance journalism, and nothing else can be nothing he says can be taken seriously, when in actual fact I think had it been published under another name, or if we'd given it to another writer, I think the level of discourse we have about the issue is very different. So I want to wrap this up. I don't want to labor too long. We've got about 15 minutes left of the pre-announced broadcast time. So let's talk about you. When you sort of came out and revealed all of this and they realized who it was, their reaction to you seemed to be very strange. I did notice that this subreddit was changed to the name Trader Joe's, which is like a play on words of Trader Joe's or something.
Yeah.
That seemed a bit childish. So what happened there? Why were you being treated as, like, I don't know, some traitor, some horrible human being for, I don't know, going public?
Yeah, when I first told the mod team that I was the person giving you information, and I laid out why I did it, explained myself like right away. Like the second that the What the Fast article came out, I immediately told them what I had done. I wasn't
Mm.
gonna sit there and like awkwardly wait for them to figure it out. I just, decided, okay, whatever. I might have, made these guys a little mad at me. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna just be honest with them.
Mhm.
And so, that's what I did. I told them exactly what I did, why I did it, all that stuff. And the first response initially was, "Okay, I'm sorry that you felt this way. We'd like to keep you on." And at
Mhm.
first they hadn't quite realized it. And at that point I had, still been sending you information saying, this is what they're saying, this is what they're doing, and you message them and use, I think, some sort of like reference to something that I had told you, just then after I had announced it to them, and they
Mm.
immediately figured out that I wasn't going to stop leaking stuff. I had very much committed to the scorched earth policy at this point. And
Mhm.
at first in the private conversation I was having with Korean Terran, he says next time I go get groceries I should stop by Trader Joe's,
Mm.
referencing of the Trader Joe's, saying,
Mm.
calling me a traitor. And that was the first part where it happened, and then he said it in the public chat with, or not the public chat, but the chat with all the mods, and said, "Ha, get it, guys, Trader Joe's, because he just betrayed us," and it was going on, and eventually it became the title for the subreddit.
It's a bit
And
childish, isn't it?
of course, it's quite childish, and I actually messaged the mods afterwards about an unrelated thing,
Mm.
which I think we'll get to in a minute. And I asked them, what's wrong with all this stuff? Like, well, why, why did all this happen and stuff? Because they had actually, effectively, I have no proof of this, obviously, but I think they might have reported my Skype account and
Mhm.
gotten it deleted off of Skype.
Mm.
And I messaged them about it, and one of the mods actually favorited my post on the subreddit, saying that well, no, sorry, on Twitter, where on Twitter I had said, by the way, if my Skype account's not working, I don't have access to it. Be careful, to all the
Mm.
people that had, had me on Skype. And I told one of the mods, or yeah, I asked one of the mods why it happened, and he's like, "Oh, well, the other mod favorited it because I'm sure he, got some sort of joy out of your pain or your difficulty." And there was even a point where, right after I was removed from the mod team, where a mod messaged me and it said, "I hope you understand how much Korean Terran was hurt by this. Poor guy was in shambles." And another team, and later on, someone said that I had caused emotional trauma on the mod team for what I had done. And I was just sitting there saying, I didn't do anything that should emotionally harm you. I told the truth. Like,
I think this goes to show just a little bit of how invested they are and how they're not making rational decisions. We've already linked to Korean Terran saying that he hates being referred to as just a janitor because he's a janitor and a judge and everything, in fact. And
mhm.
this is on the obviously Riot Free LOL subreddit. But let's talk about how your Skype got banned because so what happened? Like moments like after this, what you got reported and your Skype got shut down. So what happened? I mean,
Yeah, so
we can bring up the email if you want, if we've got some redacted details in there.
yeah, you can probably just get like the actual picture around the actual text of the email if you want. But basically, what happened was, not too long after I got, I put all this information out there and put all the articles from Richard started coming out. I got all of a sudden I was on my Skype account and I got logged out. I
Mm.
thought, that's weird. Maybe there was an update or something for my Skype. So I tried to sign back in
Hmm.
and didn't work. I was like, oh, maybe I got the wrong password. Tried again, didn't work. Tried every password I've ever used, none of them worked.
Hmm.
I tried to reset the password using my email. I got all the emails properly for them, but every time I would try and change my password, it wouldn't work.
Mm.
And it got to a point where I thought someone had hacked and changed the password and changed the email or something like that, or I had been locked out of my account somehow. And at one point, I, said, okay, I'm just going to send a message to Skype, try and recover my account and see what happens. And I'm sure once Sam starts cropping out, you'll be able to see the email. But effectively, the email, what it said was that my account had been permanently restricted.
Mm.
So I'll actually just grab that for Sam in a second
Oh yeah,
here.
yeah. You send it to Sam. Sorry, he's spinning out again. I think we've woke him. Right, come on. He did have to do a Hearthstone tournament on the weekend, so
Yeah,
he's
no
uh,
worries. I can pull it up again.
he's struggling. But anyway, so continue. So you tried to log into your Skype, and it come up that it had been reported for what exactly?
It had been reported for suspicious behavior or suspicious activities, and that it was automatically restricted by their system because of it. And that seemed odd to me because, well, I had never put any money into that account. It was
Mm.
an account that I just, used the free online talking with people and just
Hmm.
use Skype as most people use it without putting any money. I'm not using it as a phone or anything. And somehow I had committed some suspicious activity, and it made no sense. And on top of that, there was no appeal process. There was no way to get it back. It was basically gone forever. And for the people that had me on Skype, it's the account still exists and it's permanently set to away, and it never responds. It just sits there almost like a ghost.
So I'm really struggling to comprehend here. So your Skype gets banned for suspicious activity, but they didn't tell you what the suspicious activity was, and
No.
this happens to like what like how quickly after you have divulged all this information about the subreddit?
So I can give you the exact time. It was March 29th that I sent in the direct account thing, and they
Mm,
got back to me a day later. So looking at my calendar here, that would have been the Sunday.
mm,
And so maybe 1 week after you did the stuff tops, or maybe even the weekend of that it
mm.
happened. And it happened at like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning or something. So relatively close to when you posted everything, I would assume.
So basically, shortly after my final article is what we're deducing here.
Hmm.
Your Skype suddenly gets banned for suspicious activity, and when you tweet about it, moderators are favorite. The subreddit moderators are favoriting that tweet.
Yeah, one of them favorited it. And I actually just looked up the exact publication date for the NDA article, and it was the
Mm,
28th. So it happened the weekend of, actually, even sooner than I remembered. And so I've
mm.
actually lost access to that Skype account and had to make a new one, which is why setting up this account took a little bit long, or setting up this call took a little longer because obviously I didn't have all the old contacts for trash talk and whatnot.
Mm. And obviously, there is an option to report Skypes for malicious activity, isn't there?
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you feel the moderators sort of, played a hand in this, that maybe they mass reported you?
I think it's very, very possible that it happened. I'm not convinced, obviously, because you can never really know, but that's the
Mm.
only thing I could think of where anyone would take the time and effort to report my account for anything. And it says that I was automatically reported by their system, but I've only ever just sent pictures to people, had regular conversations. There couldn't be any back charging or any problem with the money because I've never put any money into this. They have no account information. Nothing in my account has any credit card on file. So there's no reason for their system to automatically restrict my account like that unless it was effectively reported like that.
Is another alternative perhaps? And speaking of someone who had this happen last time I was dealing with a big story, obviously my Hotmail and Skype got hacked. Yet, despite there being full financial records in my email that was hacked, I didn't receive a single attempt to defraud me. Nobody tried to take any money. In fact, the people seemed more interested in the Skype that I got into my Hotmail before I got back into my Skype. Is it not possible then that maybe people were trying to hack your Skype to get the logs to see what you'd given me?
It's also possible that they had tried to get into my Skype or report my Skype so that I no longer had access to the logs, which is, I guess, another possibility, even though I'm pretty sure you can still just get them in the local files. But I mean, it's entirely possible that it was a definite, like, it could have been a malicious activity, report taken out by all the moderators, because there was quite a few in the channel, right? They could have brought up, 20 reports on a single account within a couple hours of each other. So it's
Mhm.
entirely possible that it happened.
Mm. Look, let's do some quick fire questions, and then we'll let you go on about your way before we, have to face the music. Because I've got no doubt that when this VOD surfaces, and of course, you won't see this on the League of Legends subreddit, even though it
Of course
directly
not.
concerns the League of Legends subreddit. And Korean Terran can make meta posts about how he's leaving and being bullied, and it's all so bad. I've only abused my power for so long, and now I have to stand down before it's exposed. But that's okay. But of course, this isn't important. We don't need to know about this. So, quick fire questions. In your opinion, in the short time, or what was it, about a month? Was it
Yeah,
that you were a
3 weeks or
moderator?
so. Three,
Okay.
yeah, somewhere around there.
In that short time, do you believe that the level of involvement between Riot and the subreddit moderators is inappropriate. That sure, it might stay within the Reddit rules of you don't take money, you don't work directly for them, but it still might be more influential than most people would like.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the involvement that they have with Riot is definitely, if not on the line, crossing the line.
Okay. Another quick fire question. Do you believe moderators like to keep rules deliberately vague and avoid clarity in order to be able to operate outside of them? That this isn't just a Korean Terran thing. This is actually how most large subreddits like to operate because they want to exert personal preference.
Yeah, I can say 100% that Korean Terran had that exact viewpoint, and I can somewhat confidently assert that the other mods are very likely, if not definitely, holding the same viewpoint where they want the rules to be just vague enough to work around them.
And final question: in your opinion, do you feel that Reddit staff? I mean, because they were very comfortable when all of this came out. The moderators, they were like, "Yeah, we're going to be fine. We're not bothered." And of course, as I said at the top of the show, within 40 minutes, a Reddit staff member got in and said, "Hey, we've investigated this. I'm not quite sure how you perform any investigation in under an hour. It's quite an achievement, really." But do you believe that there is no real recourse, that Reddit staff are almost complicit with the way that the Reddit moderators are electing to run their subreddit?
I think it's very, very, very likely that they are completely okay with this, whether it flies in the face of the rules or not. 'Cause as far as most people could tell, it very much defied the rules with what the Reddit or r/League of Legends mods were doing. And I think at this point, it's hard to say if anything ever will be done, because I think that the way Reddit is set up gives a little bit too much power to the people that create a subreddit, whether it gets large or not. But I think what's truly interesting is how quick, as you said, how quickly the admins were able to form a full and finalized opinion on this entire situation, given, I mean, they were only able to really see what you said and what the mods said to them. They
Mm.
were very, I don't know, I just don't see a way that this could have gone as well for them. And what I think is also interesting is when we were talking about all of this and the mods, like this was back when I was still in the mod team, they were actually concerned that you had a lot of information, and they said, okay, well, what can he burn us for? And they literally listed every single thing that we brought up, and
Mm.
he said if they can get proof of all that, then that's what we've screwed up on. That's where we can get burned, and we
Yeah,
burned them on every single one of those.
I've got a screenshot of that actually, where it's
Hmm.
Buckeye lists all of the things that we put in the article.
Yeah.
And I believe it's Korean Terran chimes in, I think we've already shown that screenshot. I think it was roundabout then where he's like, "Yeah, but we can spin this." I think he says there's things we can do too.
Yeah, something
Um,
along those lines.
yeah. So, well, look, man, it's been your show. I mean, look, I want to thank you as just as a journalist. Like, I've been wanting to sort of get to the bottom and find out about what was actually going on behind closed doors with the subreddit. I still find it deeply troubling. I'm not going to lie. I've been incredibly disappointed by the way the mods have sort of behaved in the aftermath. I feel like we've seen a lot of people, look, let's look at the evidence that since this expose broke, I mean, obviously I'm banned, but now I'm site-wide banned. It used to be Richard's banned on that account, but he can create a new account and come back to the subreddit. Then it was he can't come back to the subreddit. Then it was Richard Lewis is site-wide banned. And as I said on Trash Talk, let's think about what Reddit is. Reddit is a site that allows white supremacists, child sex fantasists, people who hack people's phone and post their nudes into the public domain. All of this is okay, apparently. But for some reason, I'm IP banned and banned across every new account that I attempt to create. I'm not allowed to use Reddit anymore. And Reddit staff will not clarify why this is. Every time I contact them, they ban the IP I contacted them from. They shadow ban the account that I contacted them from. I mean, I find that strange. But on top of that, the moderators have gone public. They've started doing investigations about me, obviously. They're all over my LinkedIn. I really fail to understand how this is. If it's bad for me to do all of these things, then surely it has to be worse for a moderator to do it. So
Exactly.
I do find it very, very strange. But I'm interested by the pushback that we've seen the last couple of days. You know, that they put their awful sticky thread on today, the supposed transparency thread.
Yeah, the
It gets
41%
downvoted.
upvoted thread.
It gets downvoted to shit. It gets removed. You know, they unsticky it, I should say, rather. They're embarrassed by it. But, you know, they banned me. They banned Sam, my producer. He doesn't even... Sam, do you know why you're banned?
Nope, no idea. I don't even post on Reddit. Like, I literally don't use it. And I've never asked on any Reddit thread I've ever linked. I've never asked for upvotes.
But the moderators are saying you are not shadow banned.
Yeah, okay, that's why all my accounts are banned. I can't create new ones. I create a new account on my phone via 3G, try to log into it, suddenly, oh wait, your password's now changed, and there's no way to change it back. That's weird.
So you absolutely can't log in to any account or create any new account?
Nope, can't make any new account.
Okay. The last person that interviewed me, someone called Amanda Stevens. She interviewed me for a website I believe called She Attack. She did an audio interview with me. She was banned apparently for the 9-1 rule, which of course is selectively enforced and isn't a rule. But her content got removed, even though we talked about League of Legends in the subreddit for 40 minutes. It was removed from the League of Legends subreddit as it wasn't related to League. But of course, an Earth rap is, right? All this other bullshit is. But an interview with me got removed, and she found herself, again, shadow banned from the site, which I find interesting. One of the guy who invited me to be moderator of the Riot Free LOL subreddit, he got shadow banned on all accounts. Like, he's in the same position as Sam. So I don't know why this is happening. I find this really strange.
Yeah, and I can actually personally confirm that Harvey, the guy who made the Riot Free LOL subreddit, I saw him going through every single step to try and get around the ban. He made new accounts, and he would literally make an account, and then the second he would try and sign into it, it would basically keep spinning saying, you know, incorrect password, and it got to a point where he had to go behind a proxy in like incognito window or whatever, and basically go around everything that he could possibly go around, clear all of his cookies, his cache, everything, clear out every browser, anything. And he was able to make an account and sign in. But the second he turned any one of those steps off, the ban issues would start showing up again.
So, I mean, you tell me. You know, I don't know. I can't help but feel that this is almost as if the Reddit moderators plus the community manager called Crispy Crackers are somehow in cahoots. I don't know. I mean, we all know that only a Reddit staff member can issue these kind of bans. Yeah. So I find it interesting that they're happening with such alarming frequency and happening after I happen to report about potential collusion between Riot and subreddit moderators. Never had this problem before. Didn't have this problem when I allegedly threatened to dox the moderators a year ago. It's very interesting that it's happening now. Sam, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying the way they ban you is they add a cookie to your browser and they also IP ban you, right? So if you change your proxy and if you get to remove the cookie, you can't make an account. If you remove the cookie, change your IP, and then try and log into your old account, it adds the cookie again, bans that new IP. So basically you have to make sure you do each step and have a fresh account. If you like miss any of them, then you just rebanned and you have to redo it all again.
Sounds completely reasonable. I mean, you know, if I run like the KKK subreddit, this wouldn't be happening. I do find it strange. But look, that's a conversation for another day, I guess. So, Sam, thank you for producing an awesome show and staying awake throughout it. I know it was difficult for you. Platypus, I'd like to thank you for coming forward with all of your information. And I'll let you have the last word. What are your final thoughts about this whole predicament?
I think the whole thing's ridiculous. And honestly, I think it's gotten to a point where I think the community is slowly starting to realize how the mods aren't quite as infallible as they had once thought. They're starting to see the cracks, especially with the new thread that's come up today. And as always, whenever I come on one of your shows, I'd like to just say one last meme for Wonder Game.
God, I'm so disappointed you ended on that. Well, anyway, look, thanks a lot for everything. I'm sure this is going to go on and on. I'm sure the drama isn't going to go anywhere. I'd like to thank to everyone who sensibly watched this program. There was a lot of people who came into the Twitch channel with their own agendas and their own bullshit, and they've been promptly dealt with, and rightly so. Obviously, we'll be back tomorrow. Richard Lewis fans, me and Sam, and probably he's not Platypus, although I imagine he'll be watching. We will be doing a First Blood episode tomorrow. We're hoping that the guest is going to be B Sin. We're going to talk some juicy CLG black drama and restreaming gibberish.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's going to be sexy. But anyway, until then, I bid you all a good night and have fun in the various subreddits that you're allowed to use. See you tomorrow.